10 minutes late than never. All right, let's do this. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the DMZ America podcast, number 175 for Friday, November 8th, 2024. Coming to you from the left, I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
Excellent. And we are, of course, obviously continuing to react to the election results, obviously, Republican sweep of the Senate and the White House. We're expecting the same thing to come out of the House of Representatives. So we're moving into the era of Trump, something that has been brought home by the fact that he had made his first major announcement for his transition. He has now appointed his new chief of staff, first woman to ever serve in that position, unless he changes his mind between now and January 20th, which the mercurial Mr. Trump could well do. But
entirely possible.
But we don't expect that to happen. But of course, lots of things aren't expected to happen. So we thought that in order to help us break all of this stuff down, we would bring in Mark Fiore. He's our colleague and political cartoonist, and he is joining us live from San Francisco. Let's put in his mic. Hey, Mark, sorry for the delays there.
Oh, that's all right. No worries. It makes it all, that's a live performance. You have to deal with stuff like that. It's great. Good to see you guys.
It's good to see you guys. See you too. It's like it's always good to see you, and it's been too long, of course.
It's been way too long, and hopefully I'm not sounding like a robot. So that part's hopefully all good now.
No, you sound totally good. Like Scott, good. I mean, if you heard yourself before, you were amazing. You were like, "I am the Dalek. Destroy, destroy."
It was a pretty good accent, pretty good voice.
I don't really know what was happening there, and of course now I've got like the Texas Chainsaw Killer outside my window making all sorts of noise. So it's like a conspiracy, really. So anyway, Mark, how are you feeling about the election? First of all, I should introduce Mark. So let me read Mark's bio for people who are unfamiliar with his work, which is to say, not very many people.
Oh, no, I bet it's a lot.
The Wall Street Journal has called Mark Fiore the undisputed guru of the animated political cartoon form. And I can vouch for that. He's the only person who's been able to make this format work at all. And he's made it work very, very well. His work has appeared on the San Francisco Chronicle website, Newsweek.com, I've heard of that, Slate.com, CBSNews.com, MotherJones.com, NPR's website, and is currently being featured by KQED. Fiore's political animation has appeared on CNN, Frontline, the Bill Moyers Journal, Salon.com, and cable and broadcast outlets across the globe. Mark Fiore won the Pulitzer Prize for political cartooning in 2010, the only animated political cartoonist to ever do so, as well as the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award in 2004. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you. There's the formal intro.
Thank you. And you did. I was about to stop you. You don't have to read everything on there. So it's we can just get started and talk. But and that is a little bit out of date given the state of journalism. I'm not currently featured anymore on KQED, but it was a good run. I accidentally had a staff job for about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, I know you kind of didn't want one, right? I mean, when I first became familiar with your work, you were at the San Jose Mercury News as a print cartoonist.
Yeah, that's the thing. The only 2 real jobs I've ever had in my life that relate to journalism or cartooning were ones where they didn't want to run the animation. They only wanted the more old school, single panel work. And so, every once in a while I would do animation as part of it. But the main gig was always, no, we just want something single panel that we can just put out, either for the Mercury News case in the newspaper, or in the KQED's case, it's, online and for their social media outlets. But yeah, it was, it's always been better. What's that? You're muted.
Scott, you're muted. Let's hope the Dalek doesn't come back.
I was going to say, it's hard to believe that industry went down the crapper with that kind of forward thinking there.
I know, you're right. It's so odd. Well, and the crazy thing now is that, I don't know if I told you guys yet, but this year I'm doing a fellowship at Stanford. So
Oh, really?
You know, we
back
have
down
left,
the peninsula.
yeah, exactly. We have a left and right and an ivory tower. So yeah, it's a crazy weird time to be doing it, but it's
or Mordor, as some of us like to call it.
yeah, exactly. That's right. Although, you know, Scott, you'll appreciate this. Frequently, I'm sitting there scribbling sketches and notes right at the Hoover Institute. So I'm,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so they're, you know, not like I'm hanging out with them just yet, but you know, I'm using their facilities.
So did you have something to do with 2025? I'm just curious if
Oh, with Project 2025?
Yeah.
I helped set that up. It was
was
one of
you?
those things like where the Democrats try and run a real right winger just because they think they'll be easier to beat. It was one of those moves.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all remember 2016, right, when Hillary Clinton wanted to run against Donald Trump.
It's going to be a breeze.
Let's get the one who's really easy to beat. That'll be awesome. What could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
So obviously, you know, the election's on everyone's mind. I guess my first question for you, Mark, is: were you surprised by the results?
I honestly, I've been doing this long enough and have been through George W. Bush getting reelected, which was the first time where I was truly surprised and aghast that could happen, you know, especially in that era, if you think back to that. And then after 2016, you know, that was kind of more of a surprise, but it seemed like one of those things where I didn't want to make a prediction. And this time I definitely didn't make any predictions. But I was telling the family, you know, oh yeah, this could go well. This could, you know, Trump might be, you know, soundly defeated, but no, I honestly wasn't too surprised. So
does that come with age? Because I'm kind of in the same place. 2016, I was flabbergasted. I was gobsmacked. I was stunned. I remember walking home at 3 a.m. from a viewing party, waking up the next morning to NPR saying President-elect Donald Trump and going, oh shit, that actually happened.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a little bit with age, and it also depends on how many hangovers you've had, because it feels very similar to that feeling. You know, luckily I don't do this too often, but it's that feeling of waking up and you're like, oh God, what? Oh no. And then you kind of piece it together. You're like, oh, that can't be good. So yeah, it's a very similar feeling, like literally, you know, hangover or reconstructing a blackout. It felt like.
So if you weren't surprised, that it kind of implies to me that you might have known, you kind of anticipated that maybe you know, the Democrats weren't running the best candidate or the best campaign, or maybe they were. I mean, the takeaway that we're hearing from people like Joy Reid is that Kamala Harris ran a perfect campaign, could not have done anything different, I guess, except win. And so therefore, inshallah, you know, I mean, it's, what can we do? I mean, it was fate. It was foreordained. There was nothing that she could have done. I mean, do you agree with that?
I don't particularly agree with that, but I think it's not necessarily seeing the underlying cause or problem throughout this. I think they definitely could have run a better campaign, but that still might not have done it. You know, it's like the country is so polarized now into these immovable groups, you know, and it's become so tribal that it really, I mean, if we can't be, we meaning like, you know, someone who believes in science and democracy and stuff like that, if that side can't beat someone like Trump, there's something else going on. And maybe it's because I'm in this more academic mind frame, being down at Stanford at this fellowship, which is, it's called the JSK Fellowship, by the way, but or the John S. Knight Fellowship, I should plug. But anyway, I think a big part of it is the quote unquote low information voter. It's like people just, it's kind of a feeling. It's kind of, you know, oh yeah, you know, no, I'm more on the right. It's become much more of a tribal sort of thing. And I don't know how the Kamala Harris campaign could have fought that, short of going back in time and improving education and improving the media.
Well, the numbers are coming out now, Mark, that show that what happened was, and David Axelrod had a great quote this morning when he said that the Democratic Party's become this elitist party, you know, the NPR crowd, which that's fine. But you have to say when you say you're for the working person, yet you hold them in what clearly is such disdain. He said, you know, our workers would go in there more like they were missionaries than reaching out than members of the working class. I think he makes a salient point. I wanted to ask you though, you live in California, you've lived there for years. You've experienced Kamala Harris as the Attorney General and then as your U.S. Senator. Were you surprised at how she ran this campaign? Did you see a side of her that we didn't see? Or is this exactly what you expected from a Kamala Harris national campaign?
On the campaigning side and on the, honestly, one of the things as a cartoonist, I don't know, tell me if you both are looking at things this way too, but really one of the best signifiers of a candidate that I see and that I follow and believe in is really what they say and how they say it. Like I thought she was a pretty effective communicator. That doesn't mean that she communicated the right things, but I mean, as far as how she spoke, when she really finally, was the nominee, I was pleasantly surprised at how she could actually deliver in a convention environment or in a speech, and that was also coming off of Biden. So, give me a little leeway there. But who I used to love, and I still love, like in a grandfatherly way. And he used to be so great speaking too. I don't know if you remember his debate with Sarah Palin. That was like kind of in the more closer to the glory days of Joe Biden, where he could actually string sentences together more effectively. But anyway, back to Harris, I feel like she did a pretty good job of communicating what she was planning on doing. And it was different than what I saw with her as Attorney General, or, her as well, especially her as a VP, because in a lot of cases, she was just doing the work behind the scenes. Or
I'm asking you as the Attorney General, and she ran for statewide office in California. You experienced this, you lived there. I'm curious what you saw. Was there a difference between that Kamala Harris and Vice President Harris and presidential candidate Harris? That's what I'm asking, because you have experience that Ted and I don't have.
Yes, no, I'm seeing a difference, but it's more, the difference that I'm talking about is she's not a different person or, pushing wildly different policies or anything. It's more that you see her, and she was the public face. You get to see her when she's campaigning for Attorney General. That was a while ago. So, but she, as the presidential candidate, I thought she was different and, obviously much more visible and much more effective. Well, maybe effective is the wrong word, but she could communicate. I would consider her a good communicator. And I think she did a good job of that. And it clearly wasn't enough.
What about the word salad? Sort of the sense that she always looks like she's being deposed by a hostile lawyer when she's in front of even in front of a friendly interviewer like a Dana Bash or someone like that, where she just looked like scared, like, oh, they're going to trip me up. I could screw up. I've got to choose every word carefully. The last time I saw someone in public life look like that was Bill Clinton in the Paula Jones deposition.
Yeah, and that points out the difference, with Clinton and with Harris, the difference between, a off the cuff, media appearance or interview at a rope line or something, and a speech. I think this, obviously Bill Clinton, he could give a good speech. Kamala Harris can give a good speech, but yeah, it's very different when you're one-on-one. And that drives me crazy. And I thought Hillary was the worst at that, where you can tell they are parsing every single word as they speak it, and that drives me up the wall.
That a lot. Obama really, it doesn't now. You don't really notice it. I guess he's more relaxed. Obviously, he can be, but he always talked.
You remember the Oz
like that?
Do you remember the Oz when he would be speaking, especially on interviews, especially in 2008, and he'd give these glorious, wonderful speeches, deliver them spot on, and then he'd be on a one-on-one interview. He goes, "Well, I believe that we as a people have a right to chocolate." And it just would be interesting.
That's
That was
true.
his bookmark to check his thinking. Some of us say, some of us say other things, but his was,
And in the speechifying with him, when he was giving a speech, it was, and this would build the inspiration of it all, where it was. I'm gonna read the chat that I was doing as we were getting ready. You know, he would say it something like this: "I'm hearing lots of echo robot voice." You know, it would start very slow. It'd be like, "It sounds great when we're all muted together." You know, it was always like that. That was the pattern, and I love that. I'm definitely in tune with that kind of thing, because I use audio and voice actors, and so it's basically like caricature, but what you're picking up is audio caricature.
Are you sad that you're not going to draw much Kamala Harris? I mean, I feel like, look, obviously I have a pretty simple drawing style, but I figured Kamala's all about the dance. Fuck off, Scott. It's when someone's being rarely self-deprecating and humble.
I'm sorry.
You gotta let them roll with it. They're beating themselves up. I'm like a Shia, like anyway.
That's right.
So, but I mean, obviously, but I feel like, there's some politicians I just couldn't get, and I could get her. Like I got the eyes, the dancing eyes. Like she had those like dancing eyes. Do you feel like, you learn how to draw someone like that, and then they're poof, gone?
I didn't quite have a Kamala Harris caricature that I was happy with yet. So me either. Yeah, I wasn't there. And I mean, for the listeners, I mean, you guys have probably already talked about this, but it's, it takes a while to get a new caricature rolling and, kind of find those elements that are the ones that are, that are most highlightable, or most caricaturable. And so, clearly as a citizen, I wish she was here and I was going to be drawing her. But as a cartoonist, I'm happier with Trump.
Yeah, of course. No, he's fun to draw. I mean, there's so much going on. He's just got the coloring, the hair, the face, the looks. I mean,
the tie, the hands, the belly, the butt, everything. Now.
Yeah, I never got her. I have to admit, I never did a caricature for that. I said, okay, nailed it. It's sort of like building up to, I was looking at some old work, and like George W. Bush was that way for me. Initially, a lot of cartoonists just drew his dad, which is not accurate.
With more hair or shorter forehead and that kind of thing.
And then over time, mine was much more of a drawing, and then it became a caricature, and then it became a real caricature because
that's a good way to describe it. It starts more as a drawing, becomes a caricature, and then becomes a real caricature. Where you're
as you and your work define that person. So Kamala, I never got to, and that was my complaint about her campaign going forward, is we never got to know Kamala Harris. And that's why I was pressing you earlier on what you knew about her. Because did you feel as her senator and as your AG that you knew her? I mean, as much as you can, your senator or AG? No.
I didn't feel like I knew her. It was more just that, she might do some, like the stuff she did with the housing crisis or not the housing crisis, more the banking lending crisis back in that era. It was more, it's apples and oranges. I feel like, with an AG, you're looking at what she's doing more, and a presidential candidate, it's more the character. And I didn't know her before, and I am just kind of knowing her now, but I see what you're getting at. It's not quite there.
Yeah, like you knew George W. Bush, you knew Obama. I mean, there's obviously those are the personas they want you to know, but you knew them. You felt you had some grasp of it. Trump, sadly, we know, I'd never leave him alone with my niece or anything. That's just what I know about him. But she didn't project that. And the second, I would say, negative thing, and again, tell me if she did this in California, for me, is when the only degree I have, Mark, is from the California Republican Party Campaign Management College.
Oh, that's a good one to have, though.
Oh, God, yeah. It's opened a lot of doors. I
love it.
But they taught you carrot and stick. Ted and I have talked about this before. And one is like, obviously the stick is my opponent's terrible. They're going to make they're going to destroy America, turn into a fascist state. I'm going to make the future marvelous.
Yeah.
We didn't get that from her. I mean, we had the commercials here. Obviously, I currently live in Alabama, so we didn't get the battleground stuff. And neither did you, neither did Ted. But the commercials I did see during, especially during the World Series, were just, Donald Trump is terrible. Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But then it should be like, I'm feeling good about America. You know, you should have. And we didn't get that second half. And I was, is that her? Was that her campaign?
I think all of the above, but I think especially the campaign. And it was just yesterday at about this time, I was talking with, or he came and spoke to our group. It was one of the heads of the American National Election Survey. And he had a graph that compared the Harris campaign to the Trump campaign and the advertisements that they ran for the whole time, including, when it was Biden as well. So it was Democrat versus Republican. And the graphs were divided up into advertisements that were fully negative and attack ads. Ones like you're talking about where you're introducing yourself or you're talking about all the wonderful things you're doing, and then a mix of the two. And you could just see it. Like when it was Biden, it was more, there were more attacks. And then when he dropped out and it was Kamala, there was like a month where it was almost all introducing herself, more positive message stuff. And then it turned back into more the negative. And then by the end, it was like you're saying, it was all, anti-Trump, negative, and some mix. And then if you compare that to what the Republicans were doing, it was like solid negative all the way across. Because there's there is no positive message. It's just like negative. It's amazing. No,
that's true. I mean, the only message they ever had that was positive was that big banner. Only Trump can fix it.
Yeah,
which was like, whoa.
That's pretty. I mean, remember when he said that kind of almost offhandedly? I think it was in 2016 or 2015. And everybody latched onto that. Like, wow, he said only I alone can fix it. I think it was that. And I remember cartooning about that, and like, it's so crazy. And now here we are, fast forward to 2024.
And the implication is that, like,
the freaking banner.
The implication is that if he dies, which he will, because he's a human being and he's fat and old. So when he dies, we should all commit suicide. Like we should climb into the pharaoh's tomb and wall up with him, because only he can fix it.
That's
and
true.
If he's gone, where are we now?
How many people can fit in Trump Tower? I guess we'll have to find that out.
It was the thing that was interesting to me was the idea that Democrats seem to have this idea in this campaign that people didn't know how bad Donald Trump was, that they had maybe they weren't really familiar with January 6th, or maybe the idea that he wasn't that sweet on democracy wasn't something that had really crossed their minds. And they, by the way, there's this guy, he's really crazy, and
you may not have heard of him.
He might be he's orange. You might have seen him around with his long, shiny red tie. And then it's kind of But this really did come down to a devil you know versus a devil you don't know election. And Donald Trump was the devil we knew. And the American people, they were kind of it's kind of like, I have a really old car right now. My car is 9 years old. It doesn't always start. It sometimes takes 3 or 4 shots, but I'm scared to get a new car. First of all, because I'm scared of the cost of new cars, but also, even if I were rich, which, due to inflation, I'm not, and because I'm a cartoonist, I would still be kind of scared to get a new car, because it's you never know. With a new car, you never know. And it's this is the thing. I mean, I think that a lot of people, and bear in mind, we're only talking about 5% or 10% of the public, right? 45% of the public votes for their party's nominee if they're a rutabaga. It does not matter. But for those people in between who don't really follow these things that carefully, they're like, well, who is she? We haven't seen her around for 3 years. Last time we saw her, she wasn't doing that great at the Democratic primary debate. She got hosed there by Tulsi Gabbard, and it's that was the end of her. Bye, and never to be seen again. And I think, isn't it kind of odd that with $1 billion+ of campaign funds to spend on consultants and polling and focus groups, no one's telling you you've got to define yourself and tell us really exactly what you're going to do and what kind of president you're going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I would push back a little bit. I don't think she didn't do that at all. You know, I mean, there was definitely some. I mean, there was more than some explanation about, you know, what her policies would be and what was going on. But people don't hear that stuff. It's much more interesting to hear about how bad the other person is, or just go into your corner of the ring and, you know, go with your tribe. You know, it's like people don't. Do people really know that she was going to bring back, you know, the child tax credit? And do they really care about that if they're the people that you're talking about, the 5% who are like, I don't know, which way am I going to go? You know, so I think there's a certain amount of just, you know, it's the old, who would you rather have a beer with? You know, it's that kind of thing. It's the feel for the politician rather than the actual policies, for at least for that middle that you're talking about, or the, you know, the undecideds, like, that just drive me crazy. You know, they're like, do you want to do all these great things and help people and make America better and more loving and, you know, a better democracy? Or do you want to get fucking rich and keep the bad guys out who are smuggling who knows what over the border? You know, it's like, think of those people at the 5% in the middle. They're like, oh, that seems that's cool. You know, and he's got a wrestler, you know. It's like,
to your point, Ted and I have said, Ted, you're muted.
You're muted again there.
I was going to say, and a rich wrestler who made $100 million from boning his best friend's wife with permission and having it videoed and dumped on Gawker.
Wait, you're talking? Yeah, okay, yeah. You're talking about Hulk the wrestler. Hogan. Yeah. No, I was gonna make a bad Gavin Newsome joke, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, don't get me started on Gavin Newsome.
We'll save that for 4 years from now.
Well, no, but we are being told, I mean, consistently, well, who could have been a better candidate? And Newsome's name comes up regularly, and I got to tell you, out here in the hint, it would have been a catastrophe.
I didn't see that happening, you know, and especially when, I mean, it wouldn't have looked good, particularly, you know, on the Democratic side or on the Democrat side, you know, if there is a black woman as VP who's ready to go and wants to go, had Gavin tossed his hat in the ring, you know, like it's, you know, let her give it a shot. And it's a big bummer it didn't work. But I don't, you know, I think that might have something to do with why he didn't do it. But, you know, I'm not tight with Mr. Newsome. So we'll see.
You touched on undecided voters. Should they be allowed to vote? Because I got to tell you.
Oh, that reminds me, since I have my, you know, my school notes right here, a professor who, you know, is a political scientist and I'd really, really like, he had a great quote and said, a functioning democracy needs a competent electorate. And I think that is really a big part of what the problem is right now, is that the competency, you know, and it's not to blame the people themselves. It's the environment that's been built, you know, whether it's on the educational side or on the media side. It's like people don't know what the actual issues are. People think that the economy was better under Trump, and that when Trump was leaving the White House, that we were all better off because gas was cheap. And you're like, well, actually, gas was cheap because it was a freaking pandemic and nobody was going anywhere. Yeah. And we were trying to prop up the gas company so they wouldn't go bankrupt. You know, it's like, that's, you know, if we bring back a pandemic, gas will be cheaper again. And, you know, we'll probably get more checks from the government that might drive up inflation a little bit too.
Well, Mark, before we let you go, we got to tie things up here. What do you see going forward? What happens next? I'm always, what do you look for short-term, midterm, and long-term?
Well, as a citizen or as a cartoonist?
Either or both. Both. As a citizen cartoonist.
Citizen cartoonist. I like that. I mean, it's interesting because I'm in California, which again will probably become, or at least bill itself as the center of the resistance and that kind of thing. With we have super duper majorities in both houses in the state house, and Gavin's raring to go, and they're getting more money ready for lawyers to fight the Trump administration. So I think that's going to be super interesting in California, and to see what's going to happen in those fights. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, as far as how my work may or may not change, I think like the media figured out last time eventually, and I'd like to think I figured out sooner than everybody else did, but I'm not going to jump at every single tweet or every single thing he says. There's so much more out there.
Just like drinking from a fire hose. Yeah.
You don't need to keep up with the damn fire hose of everything he says. So the night after the election, I was giving a talk, and the last thing I wanted to do was show Trump cartoons and talk about Trump and, just like wallow in the misery of this. And so I showed a bunch of cartoons over the past few years that I had done that had nothing to do with Trump. And there's so much more. There's a world of news and issues out there that aren't focused on Trump. So whether you're a cartoonist or a reporter or whoever, it's like they're, on a local level or even farther afield, there's so much more out there.
Let me ask you, Mark, before you go, one last thing. Do you feel like many of our, not just cartoonists, but, sort of left-leaning media in general, was kind of derelict in terms of its criticisms or of the Biden administration? I mean, it was pretty clear that there were some cognitive issues going all the way back to the beginning of his term. And those were all like whitewashed or swept aside. Any doubters were sort of accused of being ageist assholes who just wanted Donald Trump back. And basically the Biden administration seemed to pretty much run out of steam after its first year. And then there was kind of like this somnolence that kicked in. And I wondered if, in a way, people who thought that they were supporting democracy and supporting the Democratic Party didn't do it any favors, because, like in the same way that Kamala was never stress tested during a primary process, the Biden administration and Biden-Harris writ large were never stress tested by internal criticism. All they were, the only people giving them a hard time was Fox News and the Republicans. But they weren't seeing that there was some legitimacy to some of these criticisms. I mean, there's kind of a stink on the Democratic Party because they kind of like lied to us about the ability of the president to do his job. And that's demonstrated by the fact that he didn't run for re-election.
Yeah, and you're right. And I don't know if I would go back as far as the very first year, but having experience, in my family with dementia and, people getting old, there's these signs that start to appear. And, and I really think this comes down more to the people that were working in the White House and the people closest to him, that I sure wish this had, changed a lot sooner. It would have been very helpful, but that's a 2020 hindsight. But
I'm going to jump in, Mark, and say that Ted and I, for the DMZ America podcast, from the swearing in, I'm going to disagree with you mildly, but Donald Trump, Joe Biden was showing signs of dementia and some cognitive erosion from the first year, and you could see it. I mean, and so Ted and I were shouted down regularly. Yeah. Because we had the temerity to point it out. Like I'm dealing with this now in my family. Ted's had to deal with a family member aging and with dementia. And I mean, I just think it's criminal that the people around Joe Biden and the DNC approved of his running for re-election this year. And that screwed a lot of things up.
Yeah, I think, but I think the question that I would have would be, remember the time, it's like January 6th and all around there. There's a lot bigger fish to fry right then, because as the way dementia runs, it's especially in the earlier stages, whatever stage he was in, there are moments of clarity, and the Inflation Reduction Act gets passed, You're like, all right.
Well, that's the big achievement.
That's the big achievement. That's great.
And it's not a small thing. I think we are going to, Scott disagreed with me when we were talking about this, but in 10 years, we're going to be driving across a bridge and we'll be like, that's a bridge that the Biden administration put through and financed.
And since I live in California, I have to drive an EV. So I have a 30-year-old car and an EV, in part thanks to the IRA.
So Mark, where can we see if we want to see all things Fiorean, where can we go?
So at right now, the best place to go is my website or on Substack. So you could go to markfiore.com, which I see you have up there on the video. Thank you. markfiore.com, or find me on Substack at markfiore.substack.com.
Wonderful.
Gotcha.
Well, good luck with the fellowship.
Thank you.
Go trees or crimson,
That's right.
whatever the hell they're called.
Yeah, the tree and the cardinal, and there's a variety. It's a trip.
It's a tree. Wait, that's the mascot.
Yeah, it's a because of
what is it with that part of the country? Isn't it like the banana slugs?
The banana slugs
in Santa Cruz.
The banana slugs are way better,
Yes,
as far as mascots, I mean, we are cartoonists after all.
they're monsters too. I mean, when I came across one in the woods, I was like, wait, that's what they're talking about?
Oh, like it's not just the color of a banana; it's often the size of one.
Yeah. But the taste is really not the same.
No, they're little,
try to peel when they get pissed off.
Yeah.
All right, Mark.
Mark, thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's great seeing
Always
you guys.
a pleasure. Come back soon. All right.
Will do. Anytime.
All right. Bye, Mark.
See ya.
All right. Well,
it's always a pleasure to see him. He's just one of those guys that you just love seeing. Every time I went to the Cartoonist convention and you saw Mark there, we didn't really stay in touch much during the course of the year, but when you'd go to the conventions, in which we had once a year, and you'd see Mark there, just say, how you doing, man? And you just feel better.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's just, I mean, it's like kind of like if you didn't know what charming was as an adjective, you'd be like, there, right there. That's a charming guy.
That's a charming cartoonist. Those, believe me when I tell you, those aren't conjoined.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. They're not conjoined, but I mean,
there are some who are.
Yeah, for sure.
But many who, a lot of guys went into cartooning because it is such an insular, individual, cloistered kind of existence. Even if you were on staff, you still had an office where you could close the door and focus and be kind of a mysterious presence in the building. But you're right. There are a lot of cartoonists who are very personable, very good. I think we're talking to two of them right now. I
would say that's true. We're very personable. And if you don't think so, we'll kick your ass and flamethrower drone you.
Yes. I was wondering, how are you going to work that into this podcast? And by Jove, you do it every time.
I wonder if you wonder, to steal from Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity. Yeah, I mean, Mark, I agree with much of what Mark had to say, but except I have to say, I do think the signs of look, here's the thing. It seems to me like the Democrats not only brought they brought a knife to a gunfight, but they didn't, and they were even offered, you can have a backup weapon, your vice presidential nominee. And you know what? I think I'm going to go for a penknife for that instead, or a stick. It's like if they're claiming that, that Trump is a fascist, that he's an existential threat to the American way and everything that is good and decent, and that he's absolutely terrifying. He's going to undo the Constitution. He's going to have mass deportations. He's going to open concentration camps. People like you and I are maybe going to have a place in those camps. It would seem to me like if you really believed that, that you would do anything possible. You would focus group and workshop your slate of potential nominees, and you would find the best American Democrat that you could anywhere in the country. I don't know if you had to dig them up under, some sort of rock in, eastern Wyoming, but you find them and you run them and you finance them, and because everything depends on it, right? This is like, it seemed the Democrats portrayed this like this was D-Day, and here they are, they're storming Normandy with like a rowboat. I mean,
well, but Ted, and Mark touched on this during his conversation, and we've touched on it. and you've mentioned it several times on your radio show, on this podcast, in your column, nudging or shoving a woman of color out of the way for another nominee, regardless of.
I think that was not possible.
Yeah, that was not going to happen. You said that from the beginning, from when the, our rumblings, which were 4 years ago about Joe Biden, that you can't shove her out of the way. You would look terrible. Now, if it went through a primary system, that's a different can of worms, right? That's just a bunch of voters making their voices heard. She lost in 2020. She could lose again. But the thing is, Ted, they also, and a lot of the Democratic apologists, Mark's not one of them, but many of them speaking today fail to remember is there was a proposal for a truncated sort of primary system that could have gone over a course of 10 days that would have given the Democratic Party a much clearer view of who the party faithful really wanted them to nominate. They nixed that. Ted, as a person who has been a proponent for and supporter of Bernie Sanders, you've never experienced anything remotely like this, where they just sort of leapfrogged the person that would have done well and nominated someone that they wanted because they were, a traditional and party standard. It's frustrating. I'm not a Democrat, obviously, but I like good politics. That was bad politics to begin with. What I'm hearing today is what Mark touched on again, which you've touched on several times, and what you and I have screamed about and been angry about is the DNC, the people around President Biden, who said, yeah, you want to run for re-election? Sure. Great idea. What could possibly go wrong? They knew what was wrong. They knew their issues. And think about this for a moment, folks, those of you who are watching or listening. They wanted to shove a person back into the presidency they knew mentally wasn't capable of executing the office. That's nefarious. I've talked about this before. That was what we witnessed was a soft coup d'etat because President Biden clearly wasn't in command. He had a staff of unelected people, faceless. I couldn't name them. I know Ted couldn't. So, that's what they were trying to foist upon us. And now all of a sudden, I had a call with Ted this morning. I have to tell you, I was furious because now they're saying all of this now instead of when it mattered, when it would have mattered, which it would have been 3 years ago. And just say, after the midterms, just say, Joe, thank you for your service.
They're taking credit. They take credit for, that's the thing about conventional wisdom, right? It's always too little, too late. What you really want is like when the boy on the side of the parade route is declaiming the idea that perhaps the emperor just appears to be nude because he really is not wearing any garments. That boy in our world, we shoot him. We flamethrower drone him. He should be on CNN, but he's not.
Well, all that being said, we have much to look forward to going forward. The next few weeks are going to be very important. We're going to see who Donald Trump appoints to his administration. He's just today appointed his first major appointment, and that's the chief of staff. His campaign manager makes perfect sense. But she herself is 69.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be the next few weeks. That'll be the area of interest. And that will tell us very much what we're going to expect from a Trump administration. So before we tie things up in a neat little bow, Ted, where can we see all things Rawlian?
You can go to Rall.com, RALL.com. You can go to GoComics.com/Ted Rall. Listen to both you and I on Centerclip for mini podcasts. And you can also go to whowhatwhy.org. Tomorrow, there will be a new cartoon posted if I ever get around to drawing it this afternoon. How about you, Scott? Where can we find your stuff?
Well, you can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City to see my political cartoon. You can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis to see my political cartoons. You can go to smirkonish.com. I draw for him exclusively. That appears there. And he just posted one of my cartoons today. He's going to post another one tomorrow. Hopefully show it on his CNN show. And as Ted mentioned, Centerclip, check it out. It's pretty awesome. So for all of us here at DMZ America, thanks for listening. Sorry for the technical stuff at the beginning. We'll get it right.
We will get it right. Yeah, we're slowly getting better. Well, it got live. We tried to do this a couple days ago, and it just didn't even work. So the fact that it's here at all, albeit lamely, albeit me with my horrible hair, it's a miracle.
Oh, it's luscious. It's
Oh,
free. Hair must be free.
Thank you, Scott. All right, that's it, everybody. See ya next week.
Ciao.